It started with the kind of silence that shouldn't exist in a house where someone's home too perfect, too calculated, like a staged crime scene on a daytime soap. There was a half-drunk glass of red wine on the counter, but the cork was still in the bottle, except it wasn't the wine we drink. This was some overpriced Malbec she said gave her migraines. Her phone, face up on the granite island, lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Jonathan Jim, which would have made sense if the man texting her hadn't been asking, "Still thinking about last night?" And to top it all off, her wedding ring was in the dish by the sink, next to a receipt for lingerie in a size I knew she hadn't worn since before our second kid, a receipt timestamped during the same weekend she claimed to be visiting her mother in Vermont. I didn't scream, didn't throw the phone, didn't storm out like the men you see in movies, hell no. I just stood there, staring at that ring like it was the fossilized spine of a creature I used to love. Something about the neatness of it all, the glass, the phone, the ring, struck me like a punch in the gut wearing silk gloves. It wasn't rage I felt, not even betrayal really. It was insult. The kind that hits you when you realize someone thinks you're stupid enough to not notice that the edges of your life have been slowly curling in like burnt paper. I put the phone down, screen still glowing with the second unread message. "You made me feel alive again." Cute. She'd barely made me feel awake in months. I poured myself the rest of that wine, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to taste what her lies tasted like, dry, smug, with notes of manipulation. She came home 2 hours later with a bag of groceries and a smile I'd seen her practice in the mirror once when she thought I was asleep. "You okay?" she asked, not even noticing the missing wine or the phone on the table. "Just thinking," I said. And I was. I was thinking about the last 7 years of shared bank accounts, matching Christmas sweaters, and fake laughter at her boss's jokes. I was thinking about how a woman who forgets to delete her text shouldn't be trusted to lie her way out of this. I was thinking about how if this was a game, she just handed me the dice and asked me to roll. That night, I lay next to her in bed, my back turned, while she scrolled on her phone, probably deleting what she could, probably still texting him with that same smug tone, the kind that says I've got them both wrapped around my finger. She had no idea the only thing wrapped around her future now was a noose made of her own arrogance. I waited 3 days before I made contact with the lover, Jonathan Jim, who turned out to be a 40-something personal trainer with the kind of motivational quotes in his bio that made me want to shave my skin off. I didn't tell him who I was. I just messaged him from a burner account, something cryptic. "If you're man enough to sleep with another man's wife, be man enough to talk to him face to face." He replied an hour later, calling me bro, asking if this was some kind of prank. I said we should meet for dinner, my treat, no threats, just truth. He agreed. Of course he did. Men like him always think they're in control until the meal gets served. I booked the restaurant she and I used to go to on our anniversaries, subtle, elegant, familiar, and told him the name. Then I waited. Every evening she kissed me with that same mouth that whispered betrayal, and every night I kissed her back like a man saying goodbye without letting her know it. The night of the dinner came. She thought I had a business meeting. I even let her help me pick out the tie. "You look good," she said, adjusting it like a loving wife. "Make a good impression." Oh, I would. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a bottle of that same Malbec, and waited. He showed up in a tight black tee and cologne thick enough to choke a horse. "You the guy?" he asked, eyes cautious but cocky. "I'm the husband," I said. He didn't sit down right away. He looked around like I might be wired, like this was a setup. I smiled. "Relax. You've already been set up. Just not by me." He sat. I poured the wine, and I hit record on the phone in my jacket pocket, right as I said, "Tell me how long you've been screwing my wife." Our life looked perfect on the outside, the kind of marriage people pointed to and said, "Now that's how it's done." We had the house with the white fence, the golden retriever, the matching Christmas pajamas, all that hollow, Pinterest-worthy crap people post when they want to pretend they're happy. And for a long time, I thought we really were. I trusted her. I brought her coffee in bed every morning before I left for work, sometimes with a stupid note folded into the napkin just to make her smile. I covered for her when she forgot appointments, defended her when she snapped at the kids after a long day, held her when her anxiety spiked out of nowhere. She'd look up at me with those tired eyes and whisper, "I don't know what I'd do without you," and I believed her. Of course I did. But then came the little shifts. The subtle tremors you feel just before the earthquake swallows your house whole. She started staying up later than me, which wasn't unusual at first. She always said the night was when she could finally breathe, but she stopped coming to bed at all some nights. I'd wake up at 2 a.m., reach for her, and feel cold sheets. I'd find her in the living room, staring at her phone, headphones in, like she was watching something too private for me to hear. When I asked, she'd say, just a podcast or some self-help thing. I didn't press. I wanted to respect her space. That's what a good husband does, right? She started using words like that: space, boundaries, growth. She said she needed to reconnect with herself, whatever the hell that meant, and that sometimes I was too available, too present. As if being there was now a flaw. She joined a yoga studio she'd never mentioned before, 145 minutes away, claiming it had better energy. I offered to drive her once, just to spend time together. She declined. Said she needed the ritual of the commute to get her head in the right place. I tried to understand. I really did. I even bought her a new yoga mat in her favorite color. She barely acknowledged it. Just smiled thinly and said, thanks, like I'd handed her a receipt. Her phone became a fortress. Face down at all times, locked tighter than a bank vault, always on silent. When I joked about how she used to leave it everywhere, on the bathroom counter, in the laundry basket, she shrugged and said, people change. I laughed. She didn't. She started dressing differently, too, not for me, not for comfort, but for someone. She'd buy clothes, expensive ones, that she claimed were for work or just to feel better, but never wore them around the house. Just packed them up and left early on Saturdays to grab coffee with Jess or hit the farmer's market. One morning, I opened the trunk of her car looking for the jumper cables and found a gym bag with heels and perfume in it, neither of which had any business at a farmer's market or coffee run. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Instead, I closed the trunk and stood there, gripping the edge like if I squeezed hard enough, I could hold my world together. She started talking about solo travel, retreats, seminars, things to expand myself, she called them. I nodded, even offered to help her book flights. She didn't take me up on it. She said she didn't want to feel managed. There were nights she'd come home flushed and glowing, practically buzzing, like she was high on something invisible. I'd ask how her day was and she'd launch into a stream of vague words: alignment, energy shifts, clarity. I smiled and nodded, watching her float just out of reach like a balloon slowly slipping its string. I didn't want to admit I was losing her. I told myself people evolve, that maybe this was just a phase, that maybe I wasn't trying hard enough to grow with her. But it got harder to pretend when she changed her social media settings, locked her Instagram behind a private wall, and stopped tagging me in anything. When I asked why, she said she wanted to curate a more intentional presence. What the hell does that even mean? I still didn't argue. I told myself it was modern relationship stuff. Boundaries. Self-care. Buzzwords that sound noble when whispered through betrayal. I started sleeping with a pit in my stomach. A slow acid drip of dread I couldn't shake. She still smiled, still laughed at the kids' jokes, still kissed me goodbye, but it was like watching a performance you've already seen from backstage. You know where the wires are, where the tears are faked. The love wasn't gone, but it was no longer directed at me. It was like I'd become a prop in her new life, something she didn't hate, just something that no longer served the storyline. And the worst part? I still wanted to believe. I wanted to believe she was just lost, not cruel. That she was still mine, not borrowed. But every day, I could feel the crack widening between us, silent, invisible, deadly. And I just kept smiling through it, hoping maybe if I smiled long enough, she'd find her way back. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were her therapy days, the one constant she never shifted, never missed, always framed as non-negotiable. She'd leave at 4:45 p.m. sharp, hair neatly tied up. No makeup except that subtle lip tint she wore when she wanted to look effortlessly presentable. She always came back at 6:15, give or take 5 minutes, calmer, a little distant, like someone who had just poured her heart out to a stranger. I never questioned it. I respected the space, the healing. But that Tuesday, she left her iPad on the bed. She never did that. It was always in her bag, tucked next to her planner, and that leather journal with the gold clasp she said was for manifestations. I picked it up to move it to the dresser, just a passing gesture, until it lit up in my hand. One notification. One message. Not from a name, but an initial J. Just one line. Can't wait to taste you again. Same time next week? The words didn't hit me all at once. They landed slowly, like drips from a leaky ceiling you didn't know existed until the whole plaster gave way. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I felt empty, hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and left the shell standing upright. My heart didn't race. It stopped. She had been lying. Not just about her feelings, not just about the slow, philosophical growth, but about the very logistics of her days. Every detail, the tight schedules, the rituals, the appointments, had been nothing more than a lie wrapped in self-help language. Therapy wasn't therapy. It was sex. At 5 p.m. on a weekday, while our kids were at soccer and I was drowning in spreadsheets at the office, I tapped the screen, opened the message thread. No password. Maybe she thought I'd never check. Or maybe she didn't care anymore. The history was there, plain and grotesque. Photos, voice notes, plans. God, you make me feel 20 again. I love how wild you are, how different you are from the women I've been with. I wish you didn't have to go back to him. Back to me. Like I was some pitiful pit stop between orgasms. I read them all. Scrolled through the timestamped proof of how deeply she'd orchestrated the betrayal. Not a fling. Not a one-time collapse. This was consistent, scheduled, almost corporate in its precision. One message mentioned our youngest son by name. He asked where you were again today. I told him Mommy's becoming her best self. A joke. A sick, stupid joke between lovers. I stared at that line for longer than anything else. It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. It was wearing my loyalty like a costume, parading it around while she handed herself over to another man, cell by cell, with the kind of joy she hadn't reserved for me in years. I set the iPad down slowly. No sound. No trembling hands. Just quiet calculation. She would walk through that door in 20 minutes. I knew the rhythm now, coat off, shoes by the heater, bag placed on the dining room chair, kiss on the cheek. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the same spot on the wall where we'd hung our first photo as a couple, us smiling in Santorini, the cliffside behind us, her hand on my chest like I was the center of her world. Now I realized she'd been removing that hand finger by finger for years. I didn't move, didn't call anyone, didn't delete the messages. I just memorized them, internalized the tone, the nicknames, the exact phrasing of how she described me to him. He's sweet, just small. You make me feel seen. Small. That word carved through me like a scalpel. Not because she said it, but because I believed it. I had let her make me small. I'd shrunk myself down so she could stretch, grow, reinvent. And now I saw what that really meant. She didn't want to expand with me. She wanted to escape. I heard her key in the lock at 6:14 p.m., right on schedule. She walked in humming, a soft little tune she used when she was trying to act casual, guiltless. I stayed silent. She looked at me and smiled. Hey, babe. Therapy was heavy, but good. I looked up at her with a calm she hadn't seen before. Not fake. Not theatrical. Just absolute stillness. Glad to hear it, I said, voice flat. She blinked, sensing something, just a flicker, but not enough to ask. I watched her turn, place her bag down, kiss me on the head, then walk into the kitchen like she hadn't just detonated the center of our life. And that was it. That was the moment everything changed. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was preparing to destroy the fantasy she built on my loyalty. She wanted a new life? Good. I'd give her one. One where her lies would finally introduce themselves to each other. Where her lover would know exactly who she was. And I wouldn't need to scream to do it. I just need time. And she'd given me plenty. She had no idea I knew. That was the beauty of it. She still moved through the house like a woman in control, leaving her receipts crumpled on the counter, her phone loosely guarded but locked. Always locked. But I'd stopped looking at her. I started looking around her. She was too careful now, too aware, so I shifted focus. I knew she always covered her tracks, but people rarely think about what their friends forget. Her best friend, Megan, was a talker. The kind who overshares on social media, checks in at restaurants like she's earning commission. So I started watching Megan instead. Not in person, that's sloppy. I created a fake Instagram account, followed Megan's page, and liked photos with a pattern, dogs, shoes, Sunday brunches. Within days, she followed back. I messaged her from the account, posing as a charming single guy with a profile built to look just real enough. Not too hot, not too bland. We chatted casually, and during one of those harmless exchanges, I asked if she was going to that weekend retreat again with her yoga tribe. She said yes. Said she was excited to finally see both of her girls again after such a long time. I asked which girls. She said, my usuals, Rachel and Ivy. We've been planning it for weeks. Rachel. Ivy. Not my wife. My wife had told me she was going to that same retreat, alone. Said she needed time to recenter without distractions. I didn't respond to Megan. I just smiled. She'd cracked the first seam without knowing it. The next move was financial. We had a shared bank account, one I rarely combed through unless there was a red flag. Now I combed. Not for big purchases, she'd never be that stupid, but for patterns. Every Thursday, without fail, there was a $27.50 charge from a coffee shop nowhere near her office or her usual route. Every single Thursday, I cross-referenced that with her calendar, the one she shared with me when we were trying to be more connected. Thursdays were therapy, supposedly, but therapy didn't charge $27.50 at a cash-only cafe 15 miles away from the clinic. I found the coffee shop's website, checked the hours. Then I waited. The following Thursday, I took a personal day without telling her. She left at her usual time, yoga mat slung over her shoulder, smile rehearsed. I watched her pull out of the driveway, then followed from 2 streets behind. She didn't go to therapy. She went straight to that coffee shop. I parked 2 lots over and waited. 10 minutes later, he showed up. Jonathan Jim himself. Baseball cap, smug little bounce in his step, dressed like he just climbed out of a men's health magazine and smelled like expensive regret. They kissed before they even reached the door. I didn't take photos. Not yet. This wasn't about proof. This was about clarity. I needed to know everything. I didn't confront. I didn't flinch. I went home, wiped the dust off an old laptop she didn't know still worked, and created a folder, The Collapse. In it, I stored screenshots of text messages I'd airdropped to myself from her iPad when she wasn't looking. I collected voice memos, emails she forgot to delete, calendar overlaps, timestamps from our home security logs, time she claimed to be out walking but was gone for far longer than a neighborhood stroll. I even pulled phone records, not the content, just the call logs, and matched them against her lies. She called him every Sunday night at 10:14 p.m., like clockwork, right after our kids went to bed and I was downstairs washing dishes. Just going to meditate, she'd say, door closing softly behind her. Meditate. Sure. I started planting questions, soft ones, baited lines disguised as care. Did Megan enjoy the retreat? I asked. You mentioned she was going too. She blinked. Oh yeah, she loved it. We shared a cabin, actually. I didn't react. Didn't smile. Just nodded. She had no clue she'd walked into her own noose. The more she lied, the more I fed the rope. At dinner, I'd ask questions I already knew the answers to, just to hear how far she'd go. Did you get that tea I like from the place near your office? She'd pause, just a hair, then smile and say, they were closed. Closed. But I'd driven past them 2 hours before and seen her car in the lot. I wasn't looking for confrontation. I was measuring the depth of her fiction. Every word, every pause, every falsely casual shrug was data. She started to notice a change in me. I could see it in the way she watched my eyes more carefully, tested her tone when speaking. She sensed something, but not enough. Just a tremor under her feet, not the quake that was coming. I had become invisible, a ghost inside our house. I let her believe she still had control. That was the key, because once she thought I was blind, she started getting careless. One night, she left her Apple Watch charging in the bathroom. I paired it to my phone before she woke up. Her texts, her steps, her heart rate, all of it, now mine. I watched it spike every time she messaged him, drop when she lied to me, rise again when she whispered his name in the dark. And through it all, I said nothing. Because the moment of truth wasn't going to be mine. It was going to be theirs. I wasn't just hunting her anymore. I was preparing to turn her world inside out in front of the man she thought she'd replaced me with. And the best part? Neither of them saw it coming. It was her company's annual gala, one of those black tie events dripping in fake prestige and real ego, the kind of evening where everyone pretends to care about charity while silently measuring one another's watches and waistlines. She insisted I come with her this year, more than insisted, begged, actually, saying she didn't want to go alone, said it was important we reconnect in public, whatever that meant. I knew what it really was. Damage control. Her lover would be there. Jonathan Jim wasn't just her trainer. He was also the company's newly hired wellness consultant, brought in for some asinine mental health initiative. I smiled and told her of course I'd come, even let her adjust my tie like we were still the couple she pretended we were. I played the role well. I stood at her side, hand resting lightly on the small of her back, nodding politely through conversations with people I'd never see again. And then I excused myself to the bar. That's where I made my move. I handed a flash drive to the event tech guy running the slideshow, a scrawny, distracted kid barely out of college, and told him, "New images for the end-of-night montage. Boss's orders." He barely looked at me, just nodded and slid the drive into the laptop. She never saw it coming. The lights dimmed toward the end, just as dessert was being served. The room quieted. First came the expected images, team photos, fundraising events, smiling faces in poorly lit boardrooms. Then, without warning, the images shifted. A grainy photo of her and Jonathan at the coffee shop, holding hands. Another, in a parking lot, her lips on his neck. Then one more, her, straddling him in the passenger seat of his truck, her blouse half unbuttoned. The room fell into a hush so thick you could hear the sound of forks dropping. Her laugh died in her throat as she looked up, horror blooming across her face like a slow, blooming bruise. I stood, walked toward her table with deliberate calm, all eyes tracking me like I was a ghost walking through a church on fire. She opened her mouth, but couldn't find words. Then she stood up abruptly, her chair screeching backward. "It's not what it looks like," she hissed, face flushing, eyes darting toward the CEO seated 2 tables away. "It was old, from before we were." I held up a hand. "Just one." She stopped. "It's current," I said quietly. "Dated and geotagged. Nice truck, by the way. I especially like the back seat." She tried to laugh then, a thin, brittle sound. "You went through my stuff? That's controlling. That's abusive, actually." I raised an eyebrow. "You had an affair. You didn't misplace a receipt." Her voice sharpened. "You never listened to me. You never made me feel seen. He made me feel alive again." The room watched, motionless. "So you thought I wouldn't notice you dying in front of me?" I replied. "You stopped talking to me. You started talking about yourself like I was no longer in the room. That's not growth. That's erasure." She blinked, faltered. Look, it just happened, okay? It wasn't some grand plan. It was spontaneous." I nodded slightly. "So was the condom wrapper I found under the passenger seat." Her mouth opened again, but this time, no words followed. "You're making a scene," she finally muttered. "I'm being quiet," I said. "You made the scene. I'm just playing back the footage." Her bravado cracked. The next mask dropped, blame. "You haven't touched me in months," she spat, a whisper meant only for me. "You don't even look at me anymore." I leaned in just slightly, enough that only she could hear. "I stopped looking at you the moment you stopped seeing me as human." She recoiled, then stepped toward me, tone now dripping with desperate arrogance. "Do you think anyone will care? Everyone cheats. Everyone lies. You think this makes you some kind of martyr?" I gave her nothing. Just silence. The kind that eats through bone. Then I leaned in again, lower this time. "You know what the saddest part is?" I said, voice even. "You didn't trade me for someone better. You just picked someone stupid enough to believe your first draft of lies. And now you're stuck hoping no one reads the second chapter." Her eyes flicked to Jonathan, who, now visibly pale, was watching the room close in on him like a noose. I turned to him, not angry, just curious. "So, how does it feel knowing she lied to both of us?" He started to speak, thought better of it, and looked away. Her face shifted again, this time to fear. Real fear. The kind that creeps in when the mask slips, and you realize you've been playing checkers against a man who built the board. "What are you going to do?" she asked finally, voice cracking. I stepped back, hands in my pockets. "Oh, I already did it," I said. "This isn't the confrontation. This is the preview." And then I walked back to the bar, slowly, deliberately, leaving her standing in the middle of a collapsing illusion, with everyone watching her, not me. She came home 2 hours after the gala, mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair undone, heels in one hand like she thought limping barefoot through our door would somehow earn back grace. She tried to slam the door behind her, but it bounced off the stopper, the sound as limp as her excuses were about to be. I was in the kitchen, pouring tea, not whiskey, not vodka tea. The quiet ritual of it must have driven her insane because she stormed in like a storm looking for thunder and got none. "What the hell was that?" she snapped, voice shaking from some combination of panic and rage. I didn't answer. Just stirred the honey into my cup and waited. "You ambushed me in front of my entire company. My boss was there." Still nothing. She stepped closer, the wounded victim morphing into the vindictive wife. "Do you have any idea what you just did? You humiliated me." I sipped my tea. "No," I said. "You humiliated yourself. I just gave you a mirror." That silenced her for a beat, but not for long. You smothered me, she hissed. You were always there, always watching, always needing something. I couldn't breathe. I looked up slowly. You said you needed a man who paid attention. Turns out, you just didn't like it when I finally did. Her nostrils flared. You never made me feel wanted. You stopped touching me, stopped looking at me. What did you think would happen? I put the cup down and met her eyes, unblinking. I thought you were an adult capable of conversation, not a coward who lies and cheats and calls it therapy. She took a step back, hands clenching the heel straps in her fingers. Don't pretend like you're some saint. You were boring, predictable, vanilla. You had no ambition, no fire. My voice didn't change, but I gave you peace. And you called it weakness because it didn't hurt. That one landed. Her breath hitched like it knocked something loose in her chest. You think you're better than me now? She spat, voice rising. You think you're clever, just because you set up some big show and made me look like a slut? I shrugged. I didn't make you do anything. I just pressed play. She began pacing, tearing her fingers through her hair like she needed something to hold on to. You're pathetic, she snapped. You couldn't satisfy me. You were never enough. If you were a real man, maybe I wouldn't have had to stop. The word cut like glass. She froze. Say that again, I said, stepping forward now, calm and steady. Go on. Say it. Tell me how your choices are my fault. Tell me how lying, sneaking, and screwing someone behind my back was just your desperate response to my mediocrity. She swallowed hard but didn't speak. That's what I thought. She tried again, softer this time, switching gears like she was flipping through an emotional Rolodex. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was confused. I thought I needed something else. You needed attention, I said. You needed someone dumb enough to think you were his prize, someone who hadn't seen behind the curtain yet. Her lips trembled. He made me feel alive again. He made you feel new, I corrected. But you're not new. You're just old lies in fresh packaging. She turned away, like my words physically burned her. What do you want me to say? She whispered, suddenly deflated. That I'm sorry? No, I said. I want you to mean it. And you're not capable of that. Not yet. She spun back around. I gave you everything. I was loyal for years. I cooked. I cleaned. I raised your kids. Our kids, I corrected. And loyalty means nothing if you sell it for compliments and gym sweat. Her voice broke then. Please, can't we just figure this out? Work through it. I stared at her. Really stared. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw the woman she chose to become. Desperate, spiraling, hollowed out by her own guilt. You think this is about saving the marriage, I said. It's not. It's about letting you see yourself the way I've started to. And how's that? She asked, voice trembling. I stepped past her and opened the hallway closet. Inside, her suitcase stood upright, packed to the brim. Not by her. By me. Like someone who doesn't live here anymore. She stood there, frozen, tears pooling in her eyes. You don't care anymore, she whispered. That's what scares you the most, I replied. Not that I'm angry. That I'm free. The silence between us stretched, sharp and suffocating, and still I didn't move. I just stood there, watching her unravel, knowing the more she screamed, the more she realized she'd lost the only man who ever gave a damn enough to stay silent until she destroyed herself. The morning after she screamed herself hoarse and crumpled on the floor like a spoiled child who'd broken her own toy, I rose before dawn and began executing the plan I'd already mapped out in silence over the past several weeks. This wasn't about emotional closure or one final conversation. That part of me, the pleading, forgiving, hoping part, died the moment I watched her kiss another man while still wearing the necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary. Now it was war, and I didn't need noise to win it. I needed precision. I started with the bank accounts, moved 70% of our shared funds into a new private account under my name. Perfectly legal, since I was the primary income earner, and we'd agreed long ago to let everything flow through my payroll. I left just enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion and to cover her gas, her coffee, and her little spiritual retreats, until she realized her cards were getting declined in about 3 days' time. Next came the insurance policies. I changed the beneficiaries, removed her name from all additional riders, and shifted ownership of the life insurance to a trust one had quietly established under the kids' names. She wouldn't even know it existed until it was too late to contest. Then, I reclaimed the car. Not the family SUV she used to haul groceries and self-pity, but the luxury coupe she guilt me into leasing for her last year because she said it made her feel feminine again. She never checked the paperwork. Never noticed I put it under my LLC. That car was gone by noon. Picked up, impounded, keys dropped off at the dealership. Let her Uber her way to spiritual awakening. I also froze the credit cards. All four, reported the accounts as compromised, and reissued new ones to a temporary address she didn't have access to. By sunset, her financial legs were already cut out from under her, and she hadn't even noticed yet. She still thought she could talk her way back into my good graces with a tear-stained shirt and a few weaponized memories. But the real fun began when I contacted HR at her company. Not through threats, not through drama, but through documentation. I sent a discreet, anonymous package with the video footage, timestamps, and screenshots of her relationship with Jonathan, all taking place on company property, during company hours, while using company devices. It wasn't my words that would destroy her, it was hers. Make me moan between meetings doesn't read well when it's tied to a timestamp on a company laptop. The HR director replied 3 hours later with a professional, tightly worded message. We are conducting an immediate internal investigation. Then I informed her parents, without anger, without embellishment. I simply forwarded them the Dropbox link labeled Her Truth. No captions, no explanations, just the facts, raw and undistorted. Let them draw their own conclusions. Let them understand why I would no longer be part of the holiday photos, or the Sunday visits, or the fake smiles over pot roast and unspoken tension. And just to be thorough, I made a call to the school counselor. Not out of spite, but because the kids deserved support, neutral, professional support, when the facade cracked open and their mother's sudden identity crisis became the neighborhood's favorite rumor. I left no loose ends. I even contacted the yoga studio where she met Jonathan, posed as a potential sponsor, asked some innocent questions, then casually mentioned the affair and my concern about the studio being linked to non-professional relationships between staff and clients. A week later, Jonathan was no longer affiliated with the studio, according to their website. I didn't even have to send them anything. Just a nudge, just a whisper. By the end of the week, every aspect of her life that she thought was stable had either crumbled or was silently rotting beneath her feet. She hadn't even tried to log into the bank account yet. She still thought she could fix this with sex, or tears, or one of those long, manipulative monologues she used to rehearse in the mirror. But I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was building a new one, with new rules, and in this one, she didn't even qualify to play. The final piece was the lawyer. I'd already met with him twice before the gala. The divorce papers were drawn up and ready, but I didn't serve them right away. No, timing was everything. Instead, I scheduled a custody mediation session without telling her. She'd received that notice 2 days later, hand-delivered, with a clause requesting sole custody based on documented emotional instability and lifestyle choices. She wouldn't even know what hit her until she showed up, thinking we were going to talk things out. By then, her credit score would be dropping, her reputation bleeding, her job hanging by a thread, and every lie she ever told preserved, documented, and indexed like a criminal's case file. And all the while, she'd keep trying to dial my number, send her sobbing voice notes, beg for just one chance to explain. But there would be nothing left to explain, because while she was too busy playing the victim, I was too busy writing her obituary, one silent, strategic move at a time. The fall began on a Sunday, quiet, intentional, perfectly timed. Her parents had invited us to a brunch at their house, one of those forced family gatherings where everyone pretends they haven't heard the whispers floating through the cracks of conversation. Except this time, I knew something she didn't. I knew they had heard. Because I'd made sure of it. 3 days before, I sent them everything, the photos, the texts, the timestamps, and the voice notes, her voice, breathless and pathetic, whispering promises to another man while wearing the ring they helped pay for. No accusations, no dramatics, just facts. Her mother didn't reply. Her father sent one message. Thank you for telling us before she embarrassed herself further. So I accepted the invitation, helped her zip up her dress, and drove her there like it was just another sunny Sunday. She didn't suspect a thing. She smiled at me in the passenger seat like she thought we were healing, like the fire hadn't already reached the foundation. She laughed when I made a comment about her lipstick being too red for eggs and mimosas. She still thought she could charm her way out of this. We pulled up, and I parked a little slower than usual. She got out quickly, smoothed her dress, fixed her smile. But something changed the moment we stepped inside. The air was different, still, cold, deliberate. Her mother hugged me first, not her. Her father didn't rise from the table. Her sister gave her a glance so sharp it might as well have drawn blood. She laughed it off, too loud, too forced, made a stupid comment about how everyone looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Just waiting for yours to catch up," her father muttered without looking up. She froze. I moved past her and took my seat, letting the silence stretch like a noose tightening behind her. Then her mother stood and said, "Sit down, Ivy. We need to talk." Her face twitched. "Talk about what?" she asked, still trying to sound playful, but there was a new edge in her voice, a wobble. "About Jonathan," her sister said flatly. "About the affair. About the fact that you've been sneaking around like a bored teenager while pretending your marriage was a prison." I watched her eyes widen, watched her spin slowly toward me like I might save her. But I just tilted my head. No smile. No smirk. Just the kind of look you give a dead thing you haven't buried yet. "Are you serious?" she gasped, now fully on defense. "You believe him? He must have edited things, taken things out of context. You're all being ridiculous." But her voice cracked halfway through, and that was the first break. Her mother sat down. "It's your voice, Ivy. Your words. Your lies. Don't insult us by pretending otherwise." She let out a nervous laugh, then sharp, broken. "Well, this is really happening. You're all just, what? Team him now? My family." Her sister cut in, voice like steel. "We're Team Truth. You had a husband who loved you, who stayed, who gave you every boring, beautiful thing you claimed to want. And you pissed it away for gym abs and cheap motel orgasms." The room went silent. Her hands trembled now, her posture faltering. She looked at me again, this time pleading. "Say something," she whispered. I didn't. I just stared, calm, centered, watching her unravel in real time. "Please," she snapped now, desperate and shrill. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Sitting there like some goddamn judge, like you're so pure. You're not. You're just cold. That's why I cheated. Because you were nothing." Still, I said nothing. Her father finally looked at her. "Get out," he said. "We'll speak to the kids ourselves. You're not going to gaslight them the way you tried to gaslight us." No, you don't understand," she cried, her voice climbing into hysteria now. "I made a mistake. I was confused. He didn't make me feel worthless like you all do." Her mother shook her head, tears in her eyes, but no softness. "You did that to yourself." She started to collapse then, literally, knees buckling, hand grabbing at the chair like gravity was punishing her for every lie. "This is insane," she sobbed. "You're all turning on me. Like I'm some villain. You don't know what it was like, being invisible, being ignored." He just watched me fade away. Finally, I spoke. One line. Quiet. Precise. "No, Ivy. I watched you burn everything down and pretend the smoke was someone else's fault." She stared at me, wide-eyed, shattered, like she'd just been dropped from a great height and only now realized the ground was real. Her mascara had fully melted now, her makeup streaked like war paint on a soldier who lost the battle before she even picked up a weapon. She turned to her sister, her last hope. "Please," she begged. "You're my sister. Don't do this. Don't turn your back on me." Her sister didn't move. I didn't turn my back. I just stopped shielding you from the consequences. She collapsed into the chair then, no longer fighting, no longer speaking, her chest heaving in shallow, broken breaths. And I stood there, unmoved, watching her drown in the ruin she built brick by brick, lie by lie. I didn't touch her. I didn't comfort her. I didn't even blink. Because she didn't just lose me. She lost everything. And now, for the first time, she finally felt it. It happened at her niece's birthday party, a family event filled with cupcakes, laughter, and the kind of fake smiles you wear like armor when there's blood under your skin. I hadn't planned to explode. I was past the need for theatrics. But she pushed. God, did she push. She walked in late, draped in a sundress that screamed innocence, holding a gift bag like she still had a place in this family, like she hadn't burned every bridge and danced in the smoke. I was talking to her brother when she inserted herself into the conversation, touching my arm like nothing had happened, like weeks of silence, shame, and public disgrace hadn't reset the axis of her entire life. "You don't have to be like this," she said through a smile, teeth clenched behind the syrup of her voice. "We can at least be civil." I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, looked through her, and replied, "Civility requires mutual respect. You lost that when you unzipped your integrity in the backseat of someone else's car." Her brother froze. The backyard grew quieter, like someone turned the volume down on the world. "You're not going to ruin this day with your drama," she snapped, her voice sharp, artificial, loud enough to pull the attention of her mother, her aunt, even her teenage cousin who was mid-Snapchat. "This isn't about the past anymore. You're making it a circus." "I didn't make anything," I said. "You juggled 2 lives until you dropped one." "I just let the audience see what hit the floor." Gasps rippled across the yard. Her eyes flared, lips twitching with fury. "Oh, you love this, don't you? Playing the betrayed hero, the poor husband. You're not a victim. You were a vacuum. You sucked the life out of everything. You drained me. And you filled the gap with someone else's sweat," I snapped. "Call it what it is. You wanted to feel powerful again, so you lied, cheated, and played house until it all collapsed." Her mother stepped forward, whispering her name like a warning. But she didn't stop. She wasn't capable of stopping. "You were weak," she screamed. "Predictable. Safe. Like a beige couch no one wants to sit on. I needed passion. I needed chaos. And now you have it," I said. "Congratulations. Welcome to the ruins." She turned to the crowd now, desperate, trying to claw her way back with volume and venom. "You all think he's some kind of saint? You don't know what he's like behind closed doors. Controlling. Cold. Empty." Her father stepped forward, stone-faced. "You made your bed, Ivy. Stop setting it on fire just because you don't like the view." That shut her down for a second, just long enough for her cousin to step aside and reveal someone standing near the fence, Jonathan. She didn't know he was there. She hadn't seen him yet, but I had. He looked frozen, like a man watching a house he once tried to enter suddenly explode from the inside. I turned to him, gestured without moving more than my hand. "Hey, Jonathan, want to weigh in? Or are you just here to see the fallout you helped build?" He blinked. I didn't mean for, no one ever does," I cut him off. "But you knew she was married. You knew about the kids. You knew, and you still showed up with a smile and an ego. So own it." "He didn't mean anything," she shouted, desperate now, spinning back to the crowd. "It wasn't real. It was a mistake." "A mistake is a wrong turn," I said, voice steady. "You took an exit and built a second life. You lied to your family, your friends, and our kids. And now you're standing here, trying to repaint the wreckage like it's art." Her voice broke then. "What do you want from me?" she shouted. "An apology? A breakdown? You want me to cry, to fall on my knees? Will that finally make you feel like a man again?" I stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on hers. "I don't want anything from you," I said. "Not your tears. Not your guilt. Not your sad little gaslighting routine you learned from Instagram therapists. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember the sound of your family turning away, the silence that followed your tantrum, the way the man you threw everything away for now looks at you like a stranger. Because this is what the end looks like. Not with fireworks. With truth." Someone was filming now. A phone angled discreetly behind a pair of sunglasses. She saw it. Everyone did. Her face crumpled, rage folding into shame, shame curdling into fear. She stepped back, eyes darting, hands trembling like they could hold her crumbling image together. "You ruined me," she whispered. "No," I said. "You did that yourself. I just made sure the lights were on when it happened." And then I turned and walked across the yard, through the stunned crowd, past the scattered cupcakes and the frozen faces, leaving her standing in the center of her own collapse. Everyone saw her now, not as a wife, or a woman scorned, or a misunderstood victim. They saw her for what she truly was. And that was the end of the illusion. It didn't happen all at once. Her collapse was slow, humiliating, and public in the most painful ways. After the birthday party meltdown, her job was the first to go. HR didn't need weeks of investigation once the screenshots started circulating among staff, thanks to a leaked folder that mysteriously appeared in the company's shared drive. The affair with Jonathan wasn't just a scandal, it violated 3 different corporate codes, and once clients caught wind, the firm did what all corporate entities do when the optics get too ugly. They cut her loose, severance-free. Jonathan? Gone the same day. Not a word of goodbye. Not a final message. Just gone, as if he'd never existed, because once the secrecy evaporated, so did the appeal. She tried to spin the narrative online, of course. She posted cryptic quotes about healing and growth, captions about learning through pain, but the comments stopped coming. Her closest friends either ghosted her or blocked her altogether. Megan? Blocked her after she found out Ivy had lied to her face for months and used her as an alibi. Even the acquaintances, the women she shared wine nights and Pilates classes with, began crossing the street when they saw her. Her mother stopped answering her calls. Her father, Once her rock wrote a message so cold it could have been carved in ice. Until you face what you've done, don't come home. Her sister never said a word, just unfollowed, deleted, erased. She sold the coop within a month, now jobless and bleeding money. She moved out of the townhouse we once shared and into a small, low-rise apartment in a less desirable part of the city, one where no one knew her name and no one cared what she used to be. Rumor had it she started working the register at a local boutique, a far cry from the corner office she used to brag about. But what no one saw, what only I know, is the night she came to my door. It was raining, of course it was, because life has a way of staging the pathetic with poetic accuracy. I opened the door, and there she stood, hair soaked, makeup smeared, eyes hollow, shoulders curled in on themselves like a woman trying to make herself smaller than her shame. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me, trembling, hands clenched around a phone she clearly didn't know what to do with. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked like an old record. I know I don't deserve anything, but I just want you to know that I still love you. I didn't answer. I just watched her, the same way I'd watched her lie, cheat, spiral. I made a mistake, she whispered. I was stupid. I was scared. I didn't know how to stop once it started. I let the silence stretch, long and merciless. I lost everything, she said, tears slipping down her face now, uncontained, ugly. And I deserve it. But I think about you every day. I dream about what we had. I see you in everything. I looked at her then, really looked, and I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger. A woman who'd torn her own life to pieces and was now standing in the wreckage, begging someone else to explain why it hurt. Do you remember our last anniversary? She asked. That little cabin in the woods? You made pancakes and burned them, and we just laughed. She was trying to dig up relics, trying to exhume a corpse. I finally spoke. Strange, I said, voice calm. I don't even remember your name anymore. She flinched like I'd slapped her, but I didn't move. I just closed the door, softly, completely, without another word, and left her on the porch, alone with the sound of the rain and the weight of her ruin. And that was it. That was the final breath of the story she tried to rewrite. She can post quotes, cry in the dark, beg God or Instagram for forgiveness, but none of it rewinds the tape. None of it undoes what she did when she thought no one was watching. And now she knows someone always was. Thanks for listening to my story. Tell me, where are you from? And did you enjoy the ride?